And I know I do it too.
So if we lean back, we can't be heard.
Recording in progress.
There you go.
You can be heard. Trust me. The select board will tell you that.
Mike's, yeah.
Good evening, and welcome to the January 8th, 2025 meeting of the Yarmouth Planning Board, our first of the new year. I'm Joanne Crowley, Chair. This is to formally advise that as required by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, paragraphs 18 to 25, and pursuant to the Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and an act relative to extending certain state of emergency accommodations signed into law on June 16th, 2021, the Yarmouth Planning Board will hold a public meeting on January 8th, 2025, at 5:30 p.m. The public is welcome to attend in person this evening or via alternate public access provided in the notice of meeting available on the Town of Yarmouth website. I will begin by taking roll call. Susan Britta.
Here.
Will Rubenstein. Jim Saban.
Present?
Peter Slovak.
Here.
Ken Smith.
Here.
Joanne Crowley, present. Seeing we have a quorum present, I will now call the meeting to order, and I would ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, here comes Will. Can you close the door behind you, Will? Thank you so much.
To catch up with us.
Look at all these smiling faces.
Don't be deceived.
Madam Chair. Well, we haven't had the ADU conversation yet, I know. Madam Chair.
Mr. Clerk, how
Happy
are
New
you?
Year.
Nice to see you as well,
It's nice
Will.
to see all six of us in the same place at the same time.
Make a note that
My
Mr.
apologies.
Rubenstein arrived at 5:35.
My
Thank you,
apologies.
not to worry. The first item on our agenda this evening, and is in our packets, Kathy prepared for us, is an update on the local comprehensive plan for us to discuss the draft existing conditions, key issues, the January 29th LCP community meeting, and receive a general update from the BSC group. Welcome, gentlemen. Appreciate you coming in this evening. So I'll turn it over to Kathy.
Sure. I think I'll just give a little introduction. BSC Group tried to get to know the town of Yarmouth as well as they could. There's a lot of things that are going on in town, and they developed some existing conditions information. I think they were trying to be more comprehensive, knowing that it's easier to kind of call out as you go along than it is to try and remember to add things in. I think we all kind of acknowledge that this is quite a bit of information, maybe too much information for the LCP. So we had talked about maybe culling it back down to just having some background information, so the basic facts and basic trends, and then talking about what's the town been working on. So what are the things going on in town so we have an understanding, and then talking about key issues and having those actually be specific items, headers in each one of the sections. We might also want to have, and I was thinking about this after we had spoken, Jeff, that maybe we need to have like an introduction to Yarmouth page at the beginning of the existing conditions, and just give some really basic information about the history of Yarmouth and who we are before we go right into talking about all these other different areas. So I think that what the BSC group was kind of looking for was whether you guys had any particular comments on this and maybe further input in addition to the information that we had provided in our conversation that I had with them on Friday, and kind of go from there.
Okay, who would like to start? Susan?
Yeah, I just had a
Ms.
couple
Britta?
of comments. I think last time when we talked about this, I was pretending I was, just moved here, and I saw this, and I was trying to answer the question in my own mind, why are we doing a local comprehensive plan? What is the purpose of this plan? And is there any requirement, because I've been here now 50 years, and I've seen probably a dozen plans, and everyone gets interested in them, and they talk about it, and next thing you know, it's on the shelf someplace and no one does anything about it. So why are we doing it, number one? And number two, is there a link between required action and this plan? Or is this just another, blue book plan that people are gonna read and say, isn't that lovely? And
I hope not.
I hope not too, but I've seen it too many times where, and this one, and again, like all of them, we spend a lot of money on these things. And what happens with them? Where, is there a link between doing this and a requirement that we do some action about it? Does this link to required action or preferred action, or is this required by the state? Do we get any benefit out of this? Because, and people who've been here a long time have the same sentiment. This is great, but I've heard all this before. You know, I've heard people 50 years say, do something about Route 28. And we're still saying it, right?
Wastewater.
Stuff?
And wastewater, sorry.
We're doing stuff.
I've only been here 20 years.
Right, but that's
Okay.
environmental, and that's one of the few issues that really get united the community. But beyond that, well, and that's not really part of this plan in the sense that this was sort of a state, this was sort of a, in the firmament outside the plan. This was gonna happen, wastewater was gonna happen whether we had a plan or not. And it had to happen. So just sort of, if you were an outsider moving to this community, why do we have this plan and what are we gonna do with it? Is there a paragraph? I didn't see it in here. I saw sort of hints about future action. But I think there should be a definitive statement about why we're doing a long-range comprehensive plan.
I think, and Jeff can certainly chime in, but I think Chapter 2, we're talking about community goals and consistency with the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan. There'll be an opportunity somewhere in here to give an introduction of kind of what's the purpose of an LCP and what the benefits are for an LCP, a certified LCP. And unless there's another section you think it would go in, Jeff?
No, I think, hi, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Thanks for having us. And yes, everything said so far, Susan's comments make a lot of sense to us. And I think the one interesting thing about providing a partial draft is that there are these gaps in the content that we want to fill in over the next, several months. But I think what I heard is the introduction is going to be really important. And I think capturing that, as a purpose is going to be really important for us. And I think that's good guidance. So it's not in there currently. And I do agree with Kathy. I think in the first kind of, we'll chip away at having a portion in the executive summary and then repeat it in that first kind of alignment with the Cape Cod Commission policy, because I think that's where a lot of this is derived from.
Okay.
So we will certainly be addressing that. And I appreciate so far the comments from Kathy. We did talk last Friday, and we did err on the side of providing more with kind of a clear expectation that we want to call it back. So we're on board with that. And any feedback that we can get from you tonight would be really valuable for us. So that we kind of call the right stuff and come back with something that I think, as Kathy said, is a little bit more user friendly. And I think the lens of someone who is picking this up for the first time, I think is going to be kind of that's a good guiding principle for us to use.
Good.
Can I follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes, please, Peter.
Have you looked at the last LCP to see if there's anything in that plan that's carrying forward that maybe wasn't accomplished? That you're just going to add again or address why it wasn't accomplished?
We will do that. I think the goals and actions, the targeted action plan is a good place for us to address things that were identified in 2014 and then not accomplished. The thing about what you guys have been so successful at is since 2014, you have done so much, and there's been so much advancement of plans and information that a lot of the 2014 information has become less relevant. And you have these superseding plans in the interim that are much more, current and are going to actually provide kind of the baseline and guide to move forward from. But yes, we will be looking back at the 2014 plan.
There's actually sections well before 2014. The most recent updates were in 2014.
Next?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Saban.
I'll go next. I actually agree with most of what Ms. Britta has said, except I would prefer the book to be green covered, not blue cover, since we have a choice of the color. So, first of all, I guess I was talking about the content of this and et cetera. I don't like the format. The landscape is kind of awkward. You have to turn your page and hold it. So I would prefer it to be read like a book with a green cover. Some of this to me is really reads like it's someone's opinion. And if I look at the very first page under live, work, play, learn, I find a comment that says, unlike other communities. I'm not sure I want our comprehensive plan to be part of comparing us to other communities. So,
In fact, Mr. Saban, during the visioning process, we all as a board did a very good job, I think, of sort of taking out some of that kind of language in the vision plan because we didn't want it to be even that too opinionated, as I recall. Isn't that correct? In terms of this, if this is going to follow from the vision plan itself, I'm going to use this word, neutered a lot of the language because of your concerns. So I agree with you. Sorry to
and when
interrupt.
I read through the document, I find some places where it seems more opinion. So I like what Kathy says about just the facts, man, just the facts. This is laying out existing conditions, key issues and needs. I'm concerned about, in here, there's comments with regards to the Matakes and suggesting potential uses. So some of the things that I read, I'm somewhat concerned about. When I look at Learn on page 1, we don't mention the fact that we have a state-of-the-art intermediate school that's just been built in our community, or the fact that we have a college that operates out of one of our schools. So some areas I don't want to be very critical, but I'm just concerned about the content and how it's prepared.
And also factually, under the Learn component, we do not have modernized library facilities currently. So I think that's our goal in terms of if this live, work, play, learn was taken from the vision plan, which I assume it was, the way that was presented wasn't a current conditions. Whereas this feels like it's current conditions. In other words, it's written like it's a current condition, but the point of the vision plan is this is what we see in the future, not what's going on now. So it feels like there just needs to be a little moving around of some of this stuff, right? In other words, we can't declare that we have modernized library facilities, Madam Chair.
I think what we
Respectfully.
will end up doing is going back to exactly
Well,
this
that's what I
page.
meant. I'm just piggybacking
yeah.
off of what Jim is saying, and so I think in terms of placeholding, like that piece up front, pulling right from the vision plan as Kathy was just holding, which I think if it can just stay closer to what the vision plan summary was, that will, I think, set people up more for success as we get farther into it. Sorry, Jim.
No, you're not misleading. A lot of detail. And again, I recognize that what this is doing is setting out existing conditions. But I feel that there's a lot of opinion with regards to existing conditions instead of just the facts. The Matakes property is 70 acres. It's considered to be redeveloped, period. Not maybe this idea, or that's what we get to do, and we get to play that game with the committee.
With the muck.
With the muck. We get to run amok. So, again, I don't want to go through every area that I found issue, but maybe I can just pass it on to Kathy later, right, in the interest of time, or?
You don't want it prescriptive. You don't want them prescribing anything, it's just the facts.
Well, I think they can
Existing
do it in a more Reader's Digest version, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at a typical reader, I found some fascinating facts in here that, as somebody who's been here 60-something years, I didn't know. So that stuff is beneficial, and to the average person that we're going to want to read this thing, we don't want them to feel like they've got to read
Yeah, it's not,
a novel.
Madam Chair, I totally agree with everything that's been said here this evening. My take on reading this, I felt like I was reading somewhat of a textbook from college. And, I think there is some wordsmithing that needs to be done. Some brevity, to me, is more in most cases. And my recommendation, I think Jim touched on it, because for us to sit here and try and wordsmith in front of the camera and in front of Jeff and Adam, my recommendation would be let's all take a stab at a wordsmithing, turn it into Kathy, or whoever, and see where you want this to go. Because I do think brevity, in many cases, would be more.
I think I had already started to kind of do that, and I got a Word, just a plain Word document from BSC Group, and what I was kind of hoping to do is maybe pick one section like transportation or something and kind of lay it kind of out as how I might like to see it done, because I know a lot of things that these guys, they just can't know Yarmouth like we know Yarmouth.
We wouldn't expect them.
Right.
We're in agreement.
Right, so I think it's very easy for me to identify, and I also know that we're working on a bunch of different things with regard to the hazard mitigation plan and a bunch of other things that I know very easily. We're still working on it, they haven't seen these products yet. So if I can kind of maybe give an example of some of the layout, then they can kind of say, oh, this is how we want to do it, and maybe they can just kind of do it. I just hate to be vague in the requests and then have them feel like they're shooting darts at a board and not sure if they're going to make it, but some examples always are very helpful. So I was kind of hoping that that's something that I could work up, and then they can kind of move forward with that.
Madam Chair, if I can circle
and
back.
I would just add, if anybody has gone through it so far and has even handwritten notes, if that is something that Kathy would be able to maybe scan and send to us, we would be willing to receive that. I think if that could be done in the next week or so, anything that you already have, we would take. And I definitely understand the subjectivity, so we appreciate that guidance. I think that that's very helpful for us to hear, and taking that out and kind of what Jim was saying, just the facts. I think we can sharpen our pencils on that. So I think that's fine, and we anticipated this, but we wanted to provide you with where we were at, so that we could be sure you want to pull back a lot of the kind of get to that brevity point. So I think we're okay with that. And then, as Will mentioned, I think we'll double check how the vision plan got laid out, because we agree that if it was from the vision plan as a goal in the future, we want to make sure that that's still that language. So we'll be double checking that.
And Jeff, the good news is we did all that work for you. So that's where I'm glad Jim brought up what he brought up, because the vision plan hopefully will be a nice jumping off point for you guys. And now I guess going backwards, all the points.
So
Yeah, that
should we
makes
get our
sense.
comments to Kathy, and then
Sure.
and then you'll bundle them and send them to the, okay.
I have a couple of comments. One, I had reviewed this with Kathy before your meeting on Friday. I had read it end to end, and there are a couple of things that I want to compliment you on. It's not all bad news coming from here. I learned a lot of stuff, especially on the natural systems. Why marshes are important, why protected habitat and brackish water and invasive species like Phragmites can wreck a wetland, and I do appreciate that, but I don't think the local comprehensive plan needs to be, if I could, a tutorial on these things. And I don't mean that in a maligned way at all. And so there were things in here that I appreciate learning. I did go through the plan, and I think Kathy has already expressed her suggestion, and we'll probably put together a pro forma of what one of them might look like that would have the facts. What are the existing conditions? The facts. The second thing that we wanted to include here are key issues. And so what I did on the document that you provided to us, I highlighted every sentence I thought identified key issues, which I think you did very well, quite frankly, especially in natural systems. Not so much in community, because that's really not done yet. That's a lot of town work that needs to be done. Those are town departments. But the building systems and the natural systems, I went through and highlighted where your work informed me about what these critical issues are and these key issues are. And I thank you for that. I found that to be very helpful. And I did that on my second reading, because my first reading was one where I'll be very honest, I called Kathy and said, I think we're in trouble, because it was so big and so content-oriented and just a lot of information. And then after speaking with her and going through it again, I looked through a different lens, and I came back with a real appreciation of some good work here. So I want to thank you for that. And I will give this to Kathy.
Thank you.
It's all marked up.
Perfect.
So for next steps on this now, Kath, what do you want us to do in support of BCS and their job?
Well, I think it's, as Susan mentioned, if you have any things that you want to particularly highlight, that you have issues with, definitely get that information to me, and I can relay that to them. Obviously, Joanne has some highlights there for some key issues. We can scan that and send that along. And then again, like I said, I'll try and do work like in the next week, at least what I think might be a format, and I'm thinking maybe transportation might be an easy one to do, because we just had the Station Avenue meeting with the select board the other night and that type of thing, so it's kind of, and all the different crashes, intersections that we have.
Timeframe,
For,
getting our comments to you
You said a week, I believe, earlier. I think Jeff said the next week.
next week, within a week?
I think the key isn't so much necessarily trying to nail down the existing conditions, but really, what information are we trying to get out of the public at our next community meeting? And how does all of this feed into that, the key issues? Are we trying to get some confirmation from the community that these are key issues? Because once you've identified the key issues, you can start identifying solutions, which are basically action items. So I think that it kind of rolls into these different things. So I think discussing a little bit maybe about the community meeting and kind of what type of facilitated questions and what information we might be able to provide to BSC Group for them to develop those facilitated questions, so that we have some type of more coalesced format for that meeting, which is going to be here before we know it. It's January 29th.
Madam Chair, before we talk about the 29th, can I say one more thing about this document?
You can say many more things.
Well, I appreciate you pointing out some of the nice things about natural systems, and as you may remember, the Open Space and Rec Plan was just completed. So one of the things that maybe would help the BSC folks is not only just using it, but also using it as a place to push people towards, because that is a group of people that spent 18 months and all they thought about was natural systems as well as recreation for the whole town, and that maybe this is an opportunity as sort of a more of an index. I'm not saying that, I know there's rules you have to follow for the Cape Cod Commission, but because of the Housing Production Plan, as another example, that's the deepest dive you're ever going to want on housing in our town, whereas this shouldn't be. But this is almost like the executive summary of some of those other pieces that sort of hold up this plan. And so in terms of the nice things that you pointed out, in terms of the cataloging of all the natural systems in town, it's not presented in as nice a format. I mean, the Open Space Rec Plan is a lot more charts and graphs, but also lots of maps. So maybe there's a way for BSC to crunch it down, but still assure people and literally link electronically as well to folks, like if you want to spend more time learning about, and with included literal action plans connected to how we can improve our open space and how we can preserve our open space and how we can improve our recreational facilities in town. The Open Space and Rec Plan is literally including for our new recreation director, whoever that is literally a guide for them moving forward, as well as Mr. Benetti, who doesn't really need a guide.
I think reading through the natural systems, obviously, they did rely heavily on the Open Space and
course.
Rec Plan. But I would like to see this exactly, kind of more like sometimes like the data sheets that we did at the very beginning,
go.
where we gave a little blurb, but then we said, you want to learn more about it,
Go
here's
here.
the link to the other
And also,
areas.
Madam Chair, because we're also trying to think about not just the people, as Mr. Smith mentioned, that have actually gone to college and read textbooks, but for anybody under the age of 40, let's just say, that would like to engage with this material, the more that you can give them links to things, if they choose to dive deeper, and make it a little more nimble in terms of how it reads and how it looks, which I don't think we were getting into tonight. I think the bigger the chances that folks under the age of 40 will want to engage with the material, full stop.
One suggestion I'd like to make, Kathy, we did agree on the LCP table of contents at our December 4th meeting.
Yep.
So I would suggest to all of you that you use that as the guide, and that's what I did, and I have a bullet list here for you as well, Kathy, where I went and highlighted bullets of what I think are key issues, using this as my table of contents. So, under natural systems, water resources, all of the the issues around our culverts and what FOBR is doing, and all of the issues surrounded that. It's just a bullet. It's an issue. Bass River Fallins Pond dredging permits. I didn't see the word dredging in here at all, and dredging is really key, I think, especially Fallins Pond and the upper segments of Bass River, and certainly at the mouth of the river and at Parker's River, which is getting dredging now. But those are the kinds of things that I identified as I went through it. But I thought that this was very helpful to use. We had agreed upon this, and I think we should, kind of log in our key issues using this as a kind of a table of contents. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that that's a great idea.
How does that differ from what's in here?
It doesn't.
It does, that's what I thought.
It doesn't, but this is just on one page.
Okay.
This has more detail than
this.
Water Resources has got three different categories in here.
Okay.
on the screen,
These are,
Madam
these
Chair.
are, these are like the bundled up categories.
It's up on the chair. It's up on the screen, Madam Chair.
I think what you'll find is the open space and rec plan, and even things that we're working on, maybe some other plans, very clearly identify a lot of the key issues and action items. And I do agree that there was a lot of information in there that said great things about what the town's working on, but it just needs to be under a header. What's the town working on? And again, key issues. And I'm very big into the bullet points. It's going to be a little hard to get too into the weeds, but if people have questions, they know where to go and they can talk to me or find out other things. Because there's so much going on in town. If we tried to explain it all comprehensively, it would take too long and it would all be completed by the time we finish the LCP. So we got to keep to bullet items and keep it short. And then what I'd also like to do is if we can kind of maybe work up a draft version of like one version or something that we all like, maybe then sending that draft existing conditions section to the Cape Cod Commission and get some of their input back on that. Say, okay, are we on the right track? This makes sense to us. Does it make sense to you? And then do the table of contents. That might be a good a touch point with them. And maybe that's a case where we would actually meet with them and kind of get any additional guidance from the commission on this. But I think if they have something to react to, it will be better than just a general meeting.
Okay.
Can I add something really quick? I appreciate this a lot. I think just going back to kind of the way Joanne mentioned that, it's less of a tutorial and more of the facts. And I think Will reiterated kind of how the open space plan and the housing production plan are the resources that we want to refer to. I think, it wasn't intentional, but I think just kind of looking back and having this discussion now, I think having the planning board help us make sure that's clear, that that's how you want to treat this document. I think that's valuable for everybody, especially as you guys, as the planning board, and we'll be bringing things to town meeting. We'll be with you and we'll be supporting you, but as you're bringing the LCP through town meeting process, I think you'll be the ambassadors of the plan, and you'll be able to help, tell people for that deep dive, for the information that, we were a little sensitive that people might feel like the information was missing. If they are coming into this is the first document that they might pick up and not be familiar with the others. We appreciate your guidance, because I think you guys will be carrying some of the weight to educate town meeting members and others that this is sort of the overview. This is the catalog of information, and almost every single component has this other, much deeper dive. This is where you can find more information. So I think if you're carrying that narrative forward, that's going to be really helpful. And so that's something that I'm just picking up right now as a real benefit of kind of showing you the long version, but really pulling it back and kind of relying on, pointing people to the other resources. And then just on the key issues, I think Kathy's correct. I think if in the next week that is something, that could have a little focus, you know the town the most, and if we can flesh out some of those key issues, we're coming back, or at least some of us, at least I will be here on January 15th, so next Wednesday. And I think that's one of the exercises that we want to go through, is talk through the key issues and the types of questions that we can ask the residents and business owners about, in getting their feedback on how the issues relate to actions. And so that's something that we're looking forward to coming back next Wednesday to talk about too.
Okay, great, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr.
Just a
Sable.
couple, if I can. Are we given the opportunity to give this to different department heads to take a peek at?
Not yet.
No,
Okay, so we're way ahead of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have been, and I actually have planned on doing that, of running some stuff by different department heads. In addition to the initial stakeholder meetings that we had, Joanne and I also had a meeting this morning with the Recycling and Solid Waste Committee, which I found to be very informative and very interesting. Which
it's a
kind
new
of
issue,
a
a new key issue.
a new key issue, exactly, about turning waste into
Leaves.
energy.
Yeah, waste
and-
into energy, and the leaves and grass.
Yep, so they came up with a lot of great things, but I've also sent similar requests with those basic questions that we had to the Health and Board of Health Chair, the Senior Center, the Energy Committee, which I think is a committee of one at this point, Historic Preservation, Old Kings Highway, Disability Conservation, Water. I want to send it also to ZBA and meet with the DNR director and the library director, just to help with those, yeah, I know, tell me about it, what's going on. It's really good. Some committees are just simply, I'm not meeting with each individual committee, we're trying to meet either with the chairs or the staff person has been sending the actual questions out to the committee members to fill out and then giving them back to me. So that works as well. So hopefully we'll get some additional information. I kind of wish I had gotten to it a little bit sooner, but hopefully we can get all of that feedback. And then, once we take that information and start developing the key issues and action items, then there's a follow-up then back to all these people with regard to, is this accurate? Is this an action item you think we can actually accomplish? Or how would you tweak it, or that type of thing? Because staff input and actual implementability is huge for this plan, or will sit on a shelf if it's too ambitious.
Okay,
Thank you. I have one more thing.
certainly.
Have members of the board had the opportunity to read the section with regards to zoning and permitting?
What page you on, Jim?
60. So there's a comment here that says, furthermore, existing restrictive zoning regulations that hinder mixed-use development opportunities pose significant challenges for businesses, developers, and property owners. I'd like to know what they are so that we can fix them.
I think that sometimes these are things that we've heard in meetings, but people may not be fully aware of the mixed-use and high-density residential opportunities that we do have in town. So again, I think it's just the facts here. Maybe that's a key issue, educating people with regard to the options that are available. But maybe it's also, making sure that we have enough of them available.
So these comments are, I'm assuming, were gathered as the perception of our community, that people in our town think that these exist, or is that,
Well, in terms of like the permitting process,
well, I mean, just look at that one sentence. Existing restrictive zoning regulations that hinder mixed-use development opportunities pose a significant challenge for businesses, developers, and property owners. Is that just community perception, or is that something?
yeah.
I think
I
that
know that
I
I've
can-
heard that perception before, so I don't know if, do we need to take a deep dive into our bylaws, not to get off track, to,
An action item will be definitely related to some heavy lifts, in my opinion, with regard to the zoning bylaw, design standards, and also the growth incentive zone.
And also, to follow up on what Jim said, on the same page, the Cape Cod Commission presented us with a chart of zoning districts, which makes it seem like there's very little commercial stuff, I'll use a technical term, going on in our town. But if you read the fine print, it's because they don't include overlay districts.
Right.
So it looks like, whoa,
That's
this
true.
place is just all houses, where there's no businesses there. And, I'm pretty sure we have some overlay districts that would like to disagree with that.
I think that they did a good job of kind of highlighting
Again, not
those.
faulting our consultants. They're gathering the pieces. But again, this is representing us to the world. And this may or may not be the most accurate way of representing ourselves to the world, despite the fact that we're showing the professor, this is like giving the professor an excerpt from their book. The professor wrote the book, and we're giving back pieces of it to them. But this may not necessarily reflect us as well as we would like it to. But again, I understand we're not there yet, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
I think that kind of does, that map, when I look at it, kind of goes along with the comment to the left of it. 88% of our community is designated as residential and 10% commercial. And that's probably not inaccurate. So when you look at the map, I can kind of see that 88, 10. Oh, and 2% classified as other. So, you know, we are kind of a residential, hate to use the term, bedroom community to the vast metropolis of Hyannis.
Maybe just maybe a sentence or two about the overlay districts next to this chart would just give a little more context. So I guess all the things can be true, Madam Chair, at the same time.
Anything else we'd like to share with the consultants while we have them? Kathy?
I guess the other thing is needing to work on the growth policy. And I think I have some ideas on what that might look like, but I think one of the key things about that growth policy is where in town do you want to have development occur? Obviously Route 28, where we have sewers, Matakees, I think there's some obvious places. Maybe we look at, the medical overlay district a little bit more closely over next to the hospital. But maybe getting some input from the community on where they would like to see growth, so that we can kind of, because one of the specific things in the Cape Cod Commission is they want you to identify in your growth policy where you want to see growth in your community.
From a practical point of view, you've lived here 60, there's not that many, it's 28, it's Station Ave, maybe, but I don't think there should be this global conversation about where do you want to have growth, because there's not that many opportunities. We are a victim sort of our Main Street being 28, going right through our community, so we have 28, we have the possibility of Station Ave. Maybe it would be easier for us to say, these are the opportunities, what do you think of them?
That's fine,
Or,
too.
do you think we should add more? Rather than, there's no sense recreating the wheel, you just have to look around. It's 28, possibly Station Ave,
South Shore
maybe down
Drive.
by the hospital.
Higgins Crowell on Mid-Tech Drive and 6A.
Yeah, there's a-
Sorry,
there's a-
White's Path, 6A,
Exactly,
right.
down in there. Maybe identify some areas that are fairly obvious. Say, what do you think of these, or add to it?
When you think about it, here's your growth right here. Because what we're about to talk about with the ADUs,
Yeah,
it's almost a, wild, wild west to, you can almost do anything. So I think there's where your growth is going to go, right there, in my opinion.
I also want to
residential growth.
Yeah.
point out, I know I was complaining about the overlay districts, but on page 61, they do talk about the overlay districts. So, but it's just, but people like beautiful charts, guys. And so the beautiful charts don't take into account necessarily the overlay district. So that's why I was harping on the chart. Sorry.
Maybe we don't need the chart.
Maybe, I don't know. But they
Confusing
did a nice
versus
job on the
items.
next page about talking about some of the nuance on 28 that does encourage mixed use. Sorry.
So I guess I'm just trying to get to some questions and, that we want to think about asking people. One of the things that was mentioned when they went before, the MUC and Bill Scott went before the Select Board last night, was having some type of questions at that meeting related to Matakees. And I think it might be generally generic in talking about the 6 different teams that we're looking at. But I think something needs to be asked about Matakees, because it is one of the big planning projects that is going on. We are going to have an audience here that we'd like to maybe tap into with regard to that.
I can't imagine how we would be able to not talk about it.
Yeah.
Which is okay.
Yeah, at a
I think
minimum.
it's-
can
we
say,
should talk about
should.
All of us,
Well, we have people in the room.
right, and we can also say every one of us is on one of the subcommittees.
Right, we can make
So
that clear,
We've
yeah.
done that,
Yeah.
so we have an entree for discussion in every one of the subcommittees and subject
Very
areas.
good
so
point.
that's- And we
Is
have
that a
fight for
conversation
that.
for next week, Madam Chair? Or is that a conversation for tonight, or is that a conversation for next Wednesday? About what we want the 29th to be like?
That would be next Wednesday.
Just
The
wanted to make
heavy hit is next Wednesday on it. This is kind of like maybe getting some general ideas of some things that we might want to be thinking about. And then just a conversation with Jeff. I know that you guys were going to be working on that, the actual virtual link, because it needs to be set up by them, because it's a little bit more detailed. It needs to have a registration so we can identify how many people might be coming remotely, so they have enough staff. And then also, there's polling involved and that type of thing, and just making sure that we get identified as the host and running a check to make sure that Liam can access that. So there's not going to be any issue with recording the meeting, at least the presentation part that's happened, and the things that are happening in this room. We probably also need to talk, once we have an idea of the questions, how we would break up this room when people come in. Right now, it's all just people sitting in chairs. They're going to breakout rooms, but are we just going to have one big breakout room here? So things like that we should probably talk about and solidify. But with regard to the hybrid, maybe running a check before the meeting next week is when Liam's here anyway, and just making sure that he can access that and everything works. Because I need to start advertising that so that people can register and people know about the meeting per se and that the virtual's coming, but I want to get a little bit more specific and get that information out to people.
Madam Chair, before our representatives leave us, could I ask, have we made any comment? I made a brief comment, but do we have an opinion on the layout being either landscaped or?
Oh, no, I prefer portrait.
I prefer portrait.
Is
I
that the
think we all
consent-
prefer portrait.
Yeah.
So I want,
Maybe not.
I don't know. They did all the work. I'd just love to hear from them as to why they chose landscape.
Well, we had a brief conversation with Kathy, and then I think it came up at one of your last meetings. So I think there seems to be a trend with the Cape Cod Commission where a lot of their materials that they're producing are in the landscape. So there are some benefits to it. But we're hearing what you're saying about potentially the portrait as being preferred. So I think we could.
We lost him.
Jeff,
Lost
Jeff,
you.
We lost your audio, Jeff.
The landscape, especially if we are.
We're losing your
Am I
audio,
back now?
Jeff.
Can you hear me now at all?
Yep.
We hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
I think we will look at portrait for your request. I don't know what you heard. We had talked to Kathy, and then the planning board had a brief discussion about landscape. But I think maybe what the difference is now that you're seeing it,
Yes.
your preference is a little bit clearer for the portrait. What I was trying to elaborate on is the Cape Cod Commission seems to have this trend, and there are some layout features that are a little bit better using the landscape. But given the almost consensus that you just had, I think we talked internally, and we could probably make that switch. In this next iteration.
I think I'm more interested in getting the content down before we try and insert it into formatting.
Okay. Good. Yeah, and Kathy, I heard your comments about the hybrid meeting. So I would love to have a conversation with you, in the next few days before the 15th. But we had an internal meeting with our IT people, and they're pretty comfortable with the way that this can work. There's a lot of security measures that we have, built in, and then this nature, this it's a little bit of the nature of the beast to kind of bring people to that room, and there'll be a presentation. We can talk about this more on Wednesday. There'll be the presentation where everyone will be hearing the same thing, and then the breakout groups, both in the room and virtually, we're going to try to be facilitating the same type of questions. And BSC Group has a software where we can poll people at the same time, so the people online could use a QR code or kind of tune into this online survey, and the people in the room could be doing the same survey, and then we can collect the data together. So we're gonna fine tune that ourselves, and then we'll talk about that on next Wednesday to make sure that it's gonna work out well for both people in the room and people online.
What do you envision the presentation being, Jeff?
So what we talked about was a brief update, sort of an overview of the project. I think that, the way this meeting started with Susan kind of highlighting, what is the purpose of this? What are we actually doing? I think we had our first meeting was the open house. So some of these people may be coming at this for the first time. So brief introduction of the nature of the local comprehensive plan, and then kind of just discussing some of the information that we have through the existing conditions. And I think the way that Kathy and I have been talking about that is really not getting too deep, but just talking about the key issues that we're finding. And I think through that discussion in the presentation, it will lead us to the breakout groups, which will be the sort of facilitated around kind of agreement on the growth policy, some kind of discussion of the growth policy, And then we want to talk about actions and kind of having people start to look at preliminary actions that the town will be taking over, over the next 10 years to support the plan. And so I'll have more detailed information for the group on Wednesday, but that's kind of the brief summary.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And the Board of Selectmen is aware of this meeting on the 29th, I assume?
It's been in their packet.
I heard them, I think,
Well, that doesn't
I
answer the
think I
question.
heard them mention it last night.
Sharon mentioned it at the meeting.
Sharon did,
Sharon
yes,
Weimer
she
from the
did.
Muck mentioned it at the presentation, hoping that we'll get more information about
And I
that
assume
property.
they'll be here too. The Muck Group.
I'm going to invite everybody. Yeah, yeah. I just need the link, so in case some people want to do it and just want to provide direction on, you need to register and stuff. So I just kind of, I need that before I can do
Hey,
that.
Kathy, one other question. Is it necessary to register?
I think if you don't register, it's not a huge deal, but it just gives us an idea of the number of people.
okay.
Yeah, so at the last minute, if you want to go in and join, just join, right? Jeff? I'm sorry, I'm looking at you,
Yeah.
but you can't
No,
tell I'm
sorry.
looking
Yep.
at you.
No, you're correct. We will ask people to pre-register, but it's not required. So anyone who picks up the link the day of or wants to attend can just join. But I think the pre-registration is just it's a good guide. It's kind of a best practice, but it will be open to anybody
I just
who
don't want
can
people to be
get to the
discouraged if
page
they
the day
haven't
of.
registered, that they don't show up.
I think it's-
want them to show up regardless of whether they're registered or not. And then
Correct.
I assume they can also walk in.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
open, yeah.
yeah.
There's no pre-registration for coming to the meeting in person. And again, it's just, it would be appreciated if you would pre-register so we have an idea, but always feel free to come anyway or something. We can add that in the advertising.
Are you having cookies?
Oh, we did have food before, didn't we?
We did.
Refreshments?
This feels like a next week conversation. Not a tonight's conversation, Jim. We're trying to get.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
this done. Thank you. On behalf of Madam Chair, of course.
I did put the muck directly after this. I didn't know if you guys on the, at BSC group wanted to hear the update on it or not. It's up to you if you want to, but so they
Yeah,
don't
I
just
mean,
leave.
if you're okay with the LCP for now, I mean, I understand there's a lot of work to be done, and we're totally on board with that, and that's great. So yeah, I'm going to stay on just to hear the conversation, but I think if there's nothing further, we'll wait to hear get some written feedback from you all on the draft. And it was a draft, so it's serving its purpose. We definitely want to get your feedback, so I appreciate that.
I
Jeff,
think
thank you
it's,
for your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
And
we'll
Adam,
be
you don't
back-
say
we'll be
much, so
back
we
up.
don't know what to say. We don't know if you've done anything, but thank you, Jeff. He hasn't said anything. I don't know who you. Can you
do it
tell?
without.
I don't know.
I
Adam,
think,
speak for yourself.
And just one note, Heather Gould has been on the call.
Right.
She's kind of stuck in the outside of the webinar, but she's been listening. So
Oh,
I just wanted to let you know she was here too.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
I think the homework for next week is the key issues, getting some input on the key issues. Is that
Personal comments to you.
personal comments and key issues? Yep.
Excellent. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Adam. In all seriousness, thank you, Adam.
And we're hardly ever
Absolutely. Thank you for your
serious.
time.
That is important.
Well, Adam has a very cool Zoom background that it took me a little while to work out, and now I'm like, oh, those are like little tiny plants that are being grown in a farm.
Because on the left, it looks like a monkey.
Right. I thought it was a frog, and then I was like, oh no, those are
On a stick
plants.
figure.
Okay. Sorry, we had to work this out, Madam Chair.
Okay.
This is 2020.
Before you came here.
No, not. He chose a very non-traditional Zoom background, Madam Chair. I just wanted to know what it was.
Adam was kind enough to participate with me in the Seaside Festival, so we got a chance to
Oh, the
talk and
Lord's
get to
work.
know each other.
Madam Chair. Sorry.
Muck.
Yes, let's move on to the second item on our agenda.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Madam Chair.
Matakey's Utilization Committee. As you know, at our last meeting, I think we all agreed that we would use our regular meetings as an opportunity to update each other on our relative positions on other committees if they have met. So if other committees have met, does anyone have an update? Because we went through this in pretty much a lot of detail with you.
It's you.
Am I the only one?
I think you're the only one.
Can I ask a
don't
process
know whether-
question? I know that thanks to you, Madam Chair, and Kathy, our information has been shared with each team leader.
Correct.
So we're just waiting to hear from the team leaders in order to schedule the meetings.
Right. That's how I.
Okay, so my report is, no one has reached out to me, but I know that everyone's busy. Thank you. That is my report. So, I mean, if that's what you're, I mean, in terms of is anything
yeah,
happening?
yeah.
Is that what you want to know? Well, I can say from education, nothing has
I haven't been
happened.
contacted either.
I'm standing by,
I will
Madam
second
Chair.
that. So-
And that's not, I'm not judging, I'm just reporting facts.
So, I did get an email today from Bill Scott to, I'm assuming the captain of my team, spelling out some things for them to do and also to reach out to apparently to me.
But
But they have not, but that was today, so I would suggest,
Progress.
What are you on again, Jim?
I'm sorry?
What's your team?
My team is Recreation.
Creation, thank you.
Say, read the open
They're,
space and
they're,
rec plan.
they're applying for a consultant, was the gist of the,
They're meeting right now in room B, and they're looking for a field consultant.
Correct.
In
Who's
order
they?
to do,
Sorry.
the Recreation Commission?
Oh, the recreation is meeting right now.
Not the muck.
no, the
Oh, this
Recreation
is,
Committee.
yeah.
Full commission. Sorry, you were going to say something.
But they are doing that field study. They got money, like $100,000, and I think they have an RFP out, and they're looking to hire someone.
So can we make the assumption if they meet at all, we will at least be notified, correct? Because none of us have been notified, can I make the assumption they have not met? Is that correct?
I think you can make the assumption that your team hasn't met. I think beyond that, I don't think
I
you
don't
can
think
make any
even
other
make that
assumptions.
assumption.
You don't think
Your
so?
team may have met, but we
I
have
don't-
not been.
Aren't we on the team?
Well, what I'm saying is Kathy, I think I think I got one email before the holidays that said, you're on the team.
Right.
Right.
So everybody got that?
Yes.
Okay. So I think all I can assume is, given that we will be hearing from the team leader who's on the muck to schedule the first meeting of each team.
Right, and I think we need to keep in mind that we just went through the holiday season.
Oh, right,
so-
right, right.
so
Okay.
It'll probably be sometime, I'm assuming they'll be reaching out to us within the next couple of weeks.
Because they
Right.
should, because they have their own
Very
schedule.
ambitious schedule, Madam
Hugely
Chair.
ambitious
Yeah,
schedule.
the thing about the schedule, and when you do meet, they're going to, and I'll share with you how my meeting went Monday with housing. It was a joint meeting of Community Housing Committee and the Affordable Housing Trust. And there was our liaison, and Bill Scott walked us through again his November 27th memo and on the process. We walked through that again, which is what Kathy had done with us. Went through Kathy's memo on zoning and what is existing there now. And the one outcome that they want from this meeting is when you're going to set your run-amok meeting. That's what they need to, and then the run-amok meetings have to be coordinated among all the liaisons. And then there are 2 more meetings after that. So they're asking us, and this is all the logistics about this, is just to get the calendar locked in on one of the 3 meetings. Then how can the muck take all of the information from those meetings and begin a process? The one thing additional that he did provide to us is the format for the ideas.
Yeah.
And that may be still in draft. I have a sense that there were some who were, there was some concern about, how it was going to work.
Yeah, I think that I just was envisioning this, that's just bullet item. You're running amok, so everyone's bullet iteming whatever they think of. I want to see 50 units of housing there. I want to see a combination of cottages and townhouses and single-family homes, or whatever you want to propose out there. And then, but they also had things about examples of benchmarking of your idea. Are there funding sources available for your idea? I really feel like that's really something more for the second meeting.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so I think that needs to be clarified a little bit more.
The first meeting's supposed to be the Jackson Pollock meeting, right?
Yes.
You just throw it all, respectfully, to all my Jackson Pollock fans.
Yes.
Okay.
And what they
Although
did,
I got the impression from, especially from listening to Scott, that they are somehow going to have to, and this applies, I think, to all the subcommittees, they're going to have to figure out some sort of ranking system. They're going to assign scores or numerical significance to certain things, so that they can have a chart, so they can compare the recreations idea with the housing idea, with the, municipal, so that they can have some idea of how to rank things. Otherwise, it is gonna be round the mark. How do you, it then becomes very subjective. I think, my idea is great. I'd never put housing there. Housing's not economic development, so you may think you've got a great idea, but unless you can rank them somehow.
Oh, Susan, we were doing so good, now
No,
we
but I mean-
disagree.
Will be ranked. There is a process.
Example,
Madam
how-
Chair, you
how
know,
are they
Susan,
gonna
Ms.
rank-
Britta,
how are they gonna rank them?
there is a process, and I would encourage you, if you have the time, not that you want to spend more time watching more meetings, but last night's Select Board meeting with the presentation by Bill and Chairwoman Weimer was an excellent primer on how it's going to go, and I think it will answer that question. Literally, it's a process presentation.
Because I listened to the meeting on Monday, and I was concerned.
Okay, well,
They addressed it then, that's good. I'll
they
watch
did
it.
last night.
Did a
They
good
did.
job last night.
They did, and I agree, totally get where you're coming from. The nice part is the way I'm thinking about it. I think Bill put it in one of the first charts, Madam Chair, is it's a funnel. Everything goes into the top of the funnel
Right.
when we're running amok, all 6 teams, and then the muck's job is to be the funnel, and that includes a uniform RFP style evaluation process and ranking system. So I have good news.
Okay.
There will be rankings.
Is that in like chat form? Did he present that in paper form,
I
Kathy?
defer to Madam Chair or to.
What's the
Kathy.
question? I'm sorry.
Last night, did Bill put all that stuff?
There was
There's a
it's in the
memo.
packet.
There-
Oh, there's a
there
memo
was
and a
a-
presentation.
PowerPoint presentation.
There it was.
Yeah, and Kathy emailed the packet to us the other day, so you can get it there.
Selectmen's packet.
I think they're hiring a consultant who will help, and I think they're hoping to have the consultant on board for maybe like the second and third meetings, and then.
Of the muck.
I think, of the teams.
Each team, they're gonna have I don't think, I don't
The
know. Good for
RFP
them.
The RFP,
I take it how you were taking it, that
They're
the
at the muck
teams were
level.
to feed the funnel.
They're not for the teams, but they might be participating in some of the
maybe.
meetings to hear things, is what I had
But
heard.
they were to help get stuff through the funnel.
Right, and do what Susan's talking about.
Right, exactly.
They're the MUX consultant. They're not, like
Right, they don't
individual groups, like Housing has Barrett Planning Group, which is helping us through the regional, I'm not exactly sure what program that was, but we have 30 hours. Each regional, each community on Cape Cod has 30 hours that they can use for helping with affordable housing. And what we're doing is using Barrett Group to help us with facilitating the first 3 MUC meetings for housing. We may then, Mary maybe has some additional money, maybe she can help hire them so that they can help us with our more formal proposal that actually ends up going to the MUC so it looks as professional as possible, because you're trying, in a sense, you're trying to persuade them. Your proposal is the best one, or that should be incorporated or part of it. So it's putting your best foot forward is what I think each team's going to be trying to do.
so there are a couple of consultant activities. One, this group PAIR, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, has already been retained to evaluate existing conditions at the site. And the second RFP, the MUC, at least the initial MUC RFP, is due the 20th. It's on the street. And I was wondering, how can we get a copy of that? Because if you go online, which I tried to get a copy of it, you have to register as a proposer.
I register as a proposer, and that's how I get it.
Oh, so you
But
can do
I
that?
have it, and I can send it to you guys if you want.
Oh, okay.
But then it doesn't clog up all but they know who's not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'd never tried to do that before, so I'll remember that then.
I actually signed up to be notified for bids because there's things that were going on in town I didn't know about, but I've seen them when they're being bid, and
Yeah.
it's very helpful.
Yeah, so I'd be curious to see what the RFP is and what it outlines as the services that they're expecting. Again, getting back to the form, the idea form, it's not meant to be completely filled out initially. It will get filled in as we go through the 3 meetings. You know, financial implications, grant opportunities, environmental concerns. I forget what's on the whole list of things, but that will, and it's a uniform format that each of the teams is going to use. And it may get adjusted over, Bill put it together over the weekend and got it out to us first because we were meeting on Monday. And so, and our run amok meeting is the 21st.
Congratulations, Madam Chair, that the first of the 6 teams has now planted
Yeah,
their
but
flag.
it's, part of the reason is it was a regularly scheduled housing meeting. And yours, Peter, might be, oh, thank you,
Took the top off, Madam Chair.
thank you. Don't put it back on.
I won't. Part of my clerkly duties. Keep you hydrated.
I'm on this side.
Okay, we'll just keep it like this, and then you're 3 o'clock, I'm 9 o'clock. Okay, all right,
I've got the blue guy,
I got it. You're right. It's an elephant, that's okay.
thank you. Peter, as an example, Peter, CEDC, I presume, will have a regularly scheduled meeting, right? I don't know. Oh, okay.
CEDC scheduled for January 27th at 5 p.m.
So they could just lay the run amok meeting into that agenda or
Yeah,
something?
I think that's what the
That
plan is.
makes way more sense.
Yeah, total sense.
Cool. Let's hope all the teams make as much
One
sense.
question I do have, Madam Chair.
Yes.
You had mentioned that the town has hired a consultant on an existing condition of the building. That's already been done.
I was gonna
The
say,
school
it-
department did it.
Yeah.
So,
In 2014, but
Is it
they're
an
updating
update?
it. Yeah.
Can you imagine getting, can you imagine what the update is? Knock it down.
I don't know when it's, I don't know when it's
And I say
scheduled
this,
to be
it's
done.
like,
It was
I know we have to-
delayed, so
I know we have to
probably
do it officially, but
mid-February.
like, what are they possibly gonna say for the tens of thousands of dollars that it's gonna cost, except for bring in the bulldozers?
2 words, nothing's changed.
Well, we'll see. I mean.
You're right,
you
Madam
know,
Chair, I apologize.
So
I withdraw.
those are the consultant things that I know are going on, and the latest on the muck. And I would encourage all of you to just take a look at the clips from last night's meeting.
It's very helpful. And the PDF as well from the packet, Madam Chair.
And if you don't have cable, you can see it online.
And there is on the town website, there is a Mattakey's Utilization Project webpage, and the old 2014 studies there, the zoning analysis there, the site map, base maps there, all that information is in one place.
On the Yarmouth website.
It's on the yeah, if you go into
Special
Town of
muck
Yarmouth
section.
website, search Mattakey's Utilization Project, it should be the first thing at the top.
And a shovel.
Anything else on this? Kath, did you want to add anything, or?
No?
Okay.
I think that's it.
Last on our agenda for discussion, anyway, Kathy, you attended a briefing on ADUs. The draft regulations developed by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities is out, and comments are due on the 10th of this month, the promulgation of the regulations. And you've put together an extensive package here, Kathy, for us. I'm not sure how much you want to go through, and I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to talk to you in advance of this meeting
Yeah,
as to whether you would like a comment letter going back, if that's an outcome that you wanted tonight or not.
I think because it's January 8th and the comments end on January 10th, if you guys wanted to provide comments, I think we need to kind of solidify something now, or we can talk about it and I can compile it and I can submit it as staff, as town planner, or maybe Joanne and I can work together and we can both submit it. But maybe, if a lot of it is,
I thought your summary of some of the issues was just, it just condensed it down to, look, these are the key things that we've got issues with.
right.
And in some way, that could be the format and cover all the, I didn't see any bases that you missed.
I did have some epiphanies on some things that I think I figured out what they were doing that I didn't on the first, second, or third read of the regulations. But I don't know.
Is the town not going to file a comment on this? They're not going to comment on this?
It would be
On
me,
behalf of the-
it would be me and/or you. Mark and I reviewed these and kind of went through it together to see what he was concerned about with regard.
Would we be sending these back to the state as the planning board comment? Is the board of selectmen not going to comment as the executive of the town?
I don't believe that they are commenting.
They are not.
I don't
It would be
believe
the
they are.
plan- if
It's
comments
us.
went at all, it's us. Okay,
It's us.
all right. I just
And I
want to
think,
clarify that.
I think we should, be on record.
Absolutely.
I'm in full agreement that we should, after all the work that was put into it, and I do agree, Kathy, that your
Sign it with
your
blood,
comments
too.
and the issues that we see and that you've pointed out in it, I think should be the basis of our comments.
Yeah.
Maybe, Madam Chair, would it help if Kathy just used her memo as a way to talk about what our concerns are? That
Yeah,
that
I mean,
would then form whatever comments we would like her to send on our behalf in the next 36 hours,
Yeah, no.
It's just 2 days.
given the short time frame.
I guess maybe if I could just kind of go through, I mean, there are some things in here that was just for informational purposes, just so that you guys understood, not necessarily that we should necessarily provide any comments on it, or that it would make any difference if we did. But parking-related definitions, they just define what a bus station was, because, anything in a half mile, you don't have to have any off-street parking. And they basically indicated that if you can flag stop a bus, that's considered a bus station. So all along Route 28 would be that.
May I just say, that is madness. I mean,
So is that-
and I respect that. How many towns are there in this beautiful Commonwealth?
351?
Okay, I respect that it's a hard thing to write policy for every single town. But this is it was one of the first things in your memo, if I recall. That essentially takes all of 28.
Yeah.
No.
Station Avenue.
No.
No, doesn't go up
You're
Station
under-
Avenue
you're-
now.
Oh, sorry,
Buddy.
28.
If an RTA bus was driving through Captain's Village and you raised your hand to them, they would
Flag.
stop to you.
Well, that's
That's
what-
flagging it. So I think of it, that's the entire town.
No, it's a pre-described route. It's not a RTA route where you can call them and come to your house, take you to Stop and Shop. The bus runs up and down 28 as a pre-described route. It's a
public
It's a
utility.
public route, within that route.
the fact that
Half
they-
a mile either side.
But the fact that they consider that a bus station as a definition is just, is the height of government nonsense. Just call it a bus, have two different definitions. A bus station's a bus station,
The bus stop's a bus stop.
and a bus stop is a bus stop.
Exactly.
But that isn't,
And
that's
the kind of
nonsensical.
thing I think we should point out in
I'm
our
going to guess
comments.
there's 350 other town planners and planning boards that are going to say that.
Just one of the comments I had, I mean, I think they really used the definition to really expand upon what was approved.
Yes.
So,
Can I ask a quick, does that mean people could park on 28? If you're
No.
within a half, if you are on the corner of, let's say, 28 and you don't have to provide parking, you have an ADU, does that mean they can park on 28?
No.
park on 28 because it's state highway.
Yeah, because
that
it's a
you don't-
highway.
Yeah, you don't
So
have
we're
it,
assuming that will be equal to the prohibitions that they have in this housing.
I mean, I don't know anywhere you can park on a state highway.
You're not supposed to, but I'm just weighing the new housing law with the state law that says you can't park on 28. This says, if you interpret it literally, you probably could. So who was gonna make that determination? I think those are the kinds of, that's your expansion issue. When
well,
you
I'm
have
just
these
concerned that instead of it
definitions that-
being half a mile from the Hyannis Transportation Center, it's now a half a mile from Route 28, a little bit of Long Pond.
In all directions.
In all directions, any place on 28.
I don't know if Station Ave has.
Oh, they don't go up Station Avenue now, but if they do in the future, yeah,
And it's any place on 28, because any place on 28, you can put your hand out and the bus is gonna stop.
correct.
Right?
That's correct. That's the way I interpret it.
So if you have a house on the corner of 28 and, Suzie Q Lane, and you put an ADU on it, could you build the case that, gee, this housing regulation says I don't have to provide parking, and my friend Jim is gonna park on Route 28?
I don't think people will park on Route 28, but they will park on Suzie Q Lane.
They'll park on the Susan, right, it'll just mean all the streets will get clogged.
That's exactly where I'm parking.
Streets will get clogged,
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
not 28.
I mean, that's the whole Kathy's issue of expansion, they took the definition of transportation and
Bus
expanded it to bus stop versus bus station.
I would like to hear your epiphanies.
Oh, okay. I don't know. My epiphanies. Gets back to the definitions, sorry. All in the definitions, people.
Also, Kathy, while you're doing that, have you had a conversation with town council about this draft?
No.
Could you just share at some point tonight where the town council is, where their opinions are, and is there gonna be time for them to formulate any in support of us and you before this deadline?
No.
Okay. Asked and answered.
I think town council, I think what they're trying, I mean, these are not defined regulations. Town council will help us interpret, once these are finalized, how we can change our zoning bylaws so it matches.
But given the timetable, again, I know we're going to get to epiphanies, Madam Chair, but given the timetable, it's 30 days when the final regulations are supposed to go into effect. Yes. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to tell them all the things that we politely disagree about. And then the state's going to come down from the mountain with the final regulations, and then the town council is going to advise us.
They're going to have to, because I would have changed our bylaw very differently after the Affordable Homes Act was enacted versus now that these regulations are in place, it would be different. And these are just draft.
No, I recognize why we're waiting. I just wanted to say it out loud, is that at some point, maybe Madam Chair has considered this as well, that there will be an opportunity for you and for Kathy, Madam Chair, to have a conversation with town council, you know, to give us advice
Oh, I
on
think
how to do this.
once
Eventually
these
that
are
has to happen.
promulgated, yes.
But I mean, we're here, right? We're not here. We're here in a month.
Yes.
Because at some point, not just us, but the zoning board by extension and the building commissioner and, okay, sorry. 30 days till fun times.
I would just like to state that maybe that's one thing that we want to make a comment on, and I didn't really include it in here, is you're having your public hearing on these January 20th. It goes into effect February 2nd. We can't do anything with zoning. They keep saying, oh, in preparation for your annual town meeting. No! We would have to have today what we would be planning to do at annual, and we can't possibly do that. We can't possibly educate the public and bring them up to speed on what all this nonsense is happening. So maybe commenting on the fact that you should be extending, I don't think they can, but the February 2nd deadline is a little, if you didn't do your job, don't expect us to have to adhere to this February 2nd.
How long would it take for us to cap short-term rentals?
I'm sorry?
If we wanted to, I think what's going to come from this too is the only protection we might have is to limit short-term rentals.
And we have that now?
But we don't have a cap on the number.
No. But the accessory dwelling units can't be used as, in our existing bylaw, as short-term rentals.
But they can February 3rd?
No.
I don't think it changes the format of that piece.
No, it just would make certain portions of our zoning bylaw unenforceable, like our parking requirements.
Right.
You know, and also, I think we also require, I think, we talked about 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, I think you can't talk about that anymore. And then we've defined how gross floor area is calculated. Well, they've decided how gross floor area is going to be calculated. So those types of things. It's very complicated for Mark, and I feel really bad for him because he's been already trying to field questions from people with regard to it, but we can't fix it at annual town meeting. They didn't give us enough time. They don't understand how towns work.
No, They understand perfectly. They did this on purpose. I mean, let's be serious here.
Kathy can't say
This is a thumb
it.
in your eye. This is a thumb in your eye.
We can say it, but
The fact that
Kathy
they-
can't say it.
get for one-party rule.
This is a thumb in your eye. This is, you publish
Not
these
correct,
things,
Jim.
you get 3 weeks to sort of get your, 3 weeks? That's an unbelievably stupid, time, but they don't care. The
It's
issue
not
is,
stupid. There's somebody up there really smart, and that's why it was done this way.
this is the local version of, remember the mandatory shelter bill? That all of a sudden now, the no good deed goes unpunished, we're paying billions of dollars to shelter people? This ultimately, I think, is going to be reviewed, because this is so dreadful in its application that ultimately, I think the bill will be amended, because there's so many parts of this that are bad.
And how long a process is that?
And forever. I totally agree with you, forever.
So let's.
We were talking about
focus.
epiphanies. I'm
Let's
sorry,
leave
Madam Chair.
Focus.
Epiphanies,
I've
you're right.
forgotten my epiphany.
Epiphanies.
So the concern is with regard to what's a protected use ADU, and those are the ones that need to be by right. And so when I first read this, I was like, oh, okay. An attached or detached accessory dwelling unit that is located or is proposed to be located on a lot in a single-family residential zoning district, and we'll talk about that definition in a minute, and no other accessory dwelling unit is located on said lot. So, okay, if you have your single-family home and you already have an accessory dwelling unit, you're done. You can't do another one. But then, when I went to the and then when I went to the presentation that was given, they gave an example.
You could have two.
Where you could have more than that, because they showed an example of, you have your single-family home and you have a 1,200 square foot accessory dwelling unit. That doesn't meet the definition of accessory dwelling unit, so that's not your protected ADU. So you get to keep your existing, this is the tricky part, your existing 12, didn't understand how they made that correlation until I thought about it, going back to the definition, because when I read accessory dwelling unit, I'm like, thinking any accessory dwelling unit, but no, beneath this definition, because it's all in the definitions.
You get to
So-
do another 900.
So you get to do another protected 900 by right. And then, right, by right. So you could have a 1,200 square foot.
Better.
Yeah,
Gets
and,
better.
and no parking, no off-street parking, Susan. Let's just throw that one on
You could
top.
have the 1,200 square foot that was pre-existing, but doesn't technically meet the definition of a protected.
Right.
Then you can build your by right protected, and then you can go in and you are required, this is my other question, having a second one by special permit. So you could technically have 3 ADUs on a property?
If you can meet setbacks and size
Yeah, there's a
lot.
lot of other things, yeah.
There's about 2 lots in the town that will meet.
There's one thing.
That shows you how clever they drafted this thing.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is maybe the recommendation is to talk about making a recommendation on the protected ADU to say, and no other accessory dwelling unit of any size is located on said lot. That way, if you have one already, you got your slice.
Your
You've
slice
got your
of the pie,
protected unit.
yeah.
Right, right.
Regardless of size, you have your
Right.
protected unit.
So that was my epiphany today of instead of asking them to clarify, make a recommendation of just change that definition to say other accessory dwelling unit of any size. I think people will feel more comfortable if it's one dwelling unit and then, one accessory apartment, but this whole concept of too many gets a little bit scary. Just while we're here, I had another epiphany, but I just want to talk a little bit about the definition of single-family residential zoning district. Any zoning district where single-family residential dwellings are a permitted or an allowable use, including any zoning district where single-family residential dwellings are allowed as of right by special permit, variance, waiver, or other zoning relief or discretionary zoning approval. So everywhere.
Right.
Everywhere.
Right.
If you allow use variances, it's everywhere. So my recommendation is we just end it after,
Allowable use.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that was a finite definition. The only question I had on the gross floor area definition was whether it included an attached garage or not, because they just say building. They don't say
Which definition are you looking at, please?
gross floor area.
Floor area.
It just says the sum of areas of all floors of the building. So
Right.
if there's an attached garage, is that counted? If it's a detached garage, is that not counted? That needs to be clear, because they say including basements, cellars,
Mention garage.
Right. Attics, they hit in there too.
whatever they wanted to say, but it needs to be clear on whether garages are or not included if it's attached to the building, because it says building. A detached one, I would say, is not, because it's not the same of the building, the dwelling unit. Just,
Madam Chair, so there are 349 other groups of people like us who are reacting to this, and 349 other people like Kathy. It seems incredible that overwhelmingly, let's say 325 of them say, this is nuts. In terms of the specifics, some of the definitions that Kathy has pointed out. But that doesn't mean that anything is going to change. So we can probably assume that what we see is probably going to be what we're going to get.
I think the
you
clearer
think?
we can make the recommendation, the better.
This
Like,
more
we want you
specific,
to,
okay.
yes,
All right.
add this language or cut it off, or delete this language, the better off you are. Because we're not going to be the only ones saying this. So if enough people, if our recommendations solve enough problems that people identified, maybe they'd be willing to make some.
And given the nature of the Cape, I think we talked about this a couple of months ago, Madam Chair. Isn't there a group of Cape Cod town planners?
There are.
So is it fair to say that you're all equally as, I'll use the word, concerned? And if so, are you all trying to send back this very specific feedback and very specific definitions in the hopes that some of this will get mitigated?
We don't meet like monthly, it's like quarterly, so we have not really talked about this. I know, like a lot of other planners, they're overwhelmed with other stuff going on.
Okay.
How much time and effort do you want to put into something where what
Can't pay
actual
attention to
benefit are you going to be
something
getting
else.
from
Okay.
it? So I think
Excellent point.
there is a little bit of that.
All right.
I mean, we put up a good fight to begin with and didn't do nothing.
So the plan is to try to modify the regulation as opposed to the legislation itself.
Yeah, we're just talking about this. Yeah, we're just talking about the draft
So
regulations.
things like, the owner occupied, that's in legislation. That's something.
Yes, that's
that-
done deal.
That's it.
Prohibited.
Yep. The other thing I just wanted to bring up to your attention is, and again, I don't think there's anything you can do about this, a principal dwelling basically includes any lot containing more than one dwelling unit. So it's single-family, duplexes, multifamily. So you could have, a multifamily housing unit, and then somebody could put an accessory dwelling unit
Yes.
off to the side. No, that's not how.
Principal unit owner, you're a principal unit owner.
Yes, because-
No, it's
especially if
not
you got
owner.
multifamily.
It's about dwelling unit. So a principal dwelling unit can be a duplex, so that's your dwelling unit. So I don't think you can get two. I think it's just the one.
But if you have two owners of a duplex,
It's two dwelling
that's
units.
single dwelling, that duplex, the left side's mine, the right side's Jim's, and we each want to put up an accessory unit.
Yeah,
I don't think you can stop us now.
I think that goes to the issue of addresses, because they had addresses, also.
We
was-
actually have a section of town that, there's a road, I can't think of the name of it, but it's off of Great Western where the intersection is, that goes off to the right. Those duplexes all got condominiumized years ago. So if you drive down that road, one side of the roof has been replaced, the other side hasn't. One side is painted.
All gone
Those
condo.
are all duplex condominiums. And why you'd have a partnership of a duplex with two, I don't know.
And they're two separate addresses, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be-
Then,
it'd
then,
be like
then each
52
address
Smith
is
Street,
is entitled to
54
an
Smith Street.
ADU.
123 Smith Lane and
Yep.
A and B,
Yeah.
Yep.
It does say a structure. So,
That needs to be clarified then. Maybe that's one of the ones we need to clarify.
I think it's important we get a picture of building commissioner today, so that next year when we see this guy walking down with pure white hair, we understand why.
he has a
Oh, I
hard
feel so
job.
bad for him.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be awful.
I mean, if that's the case, what if you condominiumized a multifamily, and there's 10 units in there? Each one cannot have their own accessory
You
dwelling
would think.
unit.
Keep in mind that the,
It's a structure, so just the more questions, I mean, if you want to ask it,
yeah, no,
because then
I think
if
it's
you,
worth asking, because where's that structure end? If the lot was, you had a condo unit that's 6 units and you're on 6 acres, I'm making it up, but if they all wanted to put an accessory unit in, my structure is my condo.
and it may not apply in our town, but some towns out western part of the state, they got a big acreage, they could.
How about in the city of Boston?
Or in Boston.
You know?
But I think the key to this whole thing is if you read the first paragraph of the letter and understand that their goal is to create 8,000 to 10,000 new units within the next 5 years. So that's all they see.
And also, Kathy, is one other mechanism, maybe it's a very long shot, is there a way to maybe strengthen the unreasonable, hold on, the section 71.03, number 3, where you can, which says unreasonable regulations, a municipality may reasonably regulate and restrict protected use ADUs. Is there a way for us to put something in, or suggest to put something in there that gives us a little more
I'm sorry.
protection? Sorry. So if I read this correctly, this is classic government stuff where they make it a double negative. So 71.03. Then you go to number 3,
Yep.
which says unreasonable regulation. We feel like this whole darn thing is unreasonable. However, it gives towns the ability to regulate and restrict ADUs,
Yes.
provided blah, 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 blah. So what I'm saying is there a way to strengthen that section from our perspective? Because so what the state's gonna say is, but we gave the towns a way to slow this down or have the ability to say no. And then, of course, they make it so impossible that nothing is gonna get stopped. But they can claim that there's a mechanism under this law to do it. You following where I'm going with this?
Will,
So, I mean-
read the whole paragraph, though, Will.
I don't want to.
The last sentence says,
kidding, where?
you can't make it so restrictive that it restricts the use of it.
Okay, where is that?
Further down in C, in
It's
71.03.
said several times through the document.
Oh, 3C, notwithstanding all this other junk.
Right.
Okay,
It's also the word
I tried.
reasonable.
They all thought me. They have better
Something-
lawyers.
I think something is interesting, though.
Yeah.
With regard to the dimensional standards, it's like, what's prohibited is setting any dimensional setbacks, lot sizes, lot coverage, open space, and bulk and height that are more restrictive than what is required in the single-family residential neighborhood. So, based on that definition, is the by right protected ADU only people who can 100% meet our bylaw and our minimum lot sizes and our minimum setbacks?
See, this is where our friends on the town council have to speak. Not that you're wrong or right.
as it
I certainly hope
doesn't-
you're right, but I would like to know what the town council has
I
to say.
think what they want you to do is what is customary in under your current zoning, if it says you got a 30-foot side yard setback, then your accessory dwelling units in the future have to have a 30-foot side yard setback.
On a minimum lot size of 25,000 in the
Can't
R25.
make it more restrictive.
Right, so that to me means the by right ADUs are only limited to
Those that conform to current
full
zoning.
conforming lot sizes, and if you can put your ADU fully conforming to our dimensional standards,
And you don't
including
need a
lot
special,
coverage,
and you don't need a special permit.
then you don't need a special
Right.
permit. But, so does that mean anything that doesn't meet that, we can do special permit?
I don't know.
Well, the lot size
And
would
I
be.
don't know if I want to ask them that question, because I like this language.
Nobody's
I
thought
like
of it,
this
and then they're gonna
language.
go, they're gonna close that loop.
Right, because they seem to be,
That's what I'm afraid of, that they'll
Yes.
say, they'll
they're
close the
using the
loop.
concept of special permit, exactly, to close any loophole that they didn't think of.
Right.
Because the special permit is woven all through the thing. If you can't get what you want, go for a special permit. Because they don't define unreasonable, which is, of course, is,
They
some means
kind of-
unreasonable, another means, fabulous idea.
They kind of do, a little bit.
They give examples, but they really don't define it. It says unreasonable regulation, and they do say an unreasonable regulation cannot be in excess of what you currently have. As Jim said, what you currently have is reasonable. Anything other than that is unreasonable. That's how I'm reading that.
Anything you would require a single-family home to do,
You can.
you can
Apply to
do.
this, right.
Yes.
But you can't be more, you can't all of a sudden, we want design standards for your ADU, but we don't care what your
Yeah,
house
well, say
looks
the
like.
ADU's got to be 40 feet away from the lot line as opposed to 30. That would
What
be.
they want you to do is change your setbacks to lower them for ADUs.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
that's exactly what
yes,
they want.
Yes.
But I don't see that flying in the town of Yarmouth. So I feel like maybe that's more of a question for town council, and maybe we don't comment on this because I like the way it's worded. I think it's less, I think it's more in tune with the original ideas that we had with regard to carving out things that could have been by right originally. Remember, we had those three
We had
things?
the three, yep.
Yes.
We were fine with that, we just didn't think it was gonna pass town meeting.
Speak for yourself.
You weren't fine with that?
No, originally.
us
when
were,
we
some of
started the
us
conversation
whatever.
about special permit
We d-
versus
we-
by-
we
that
gave
was
up on
exactly
We
that.
had three things, and
that was
this would have fit
exactly it.
into
Yes.
one of those three. I forget, probably the first one, because you're doing everything that's meeting current zoning, you're meeting the minimum lot size, have at it, build an ADU in your
There
backyard.
are folks applying to the zoning, but there was on the agenda for tomorrow. There's somebody applying for an accessory dwelling unit.
ZBA, yeah.
So I mean,
It doesn't apply till,
well, no, I'm just thinking out loud that like there are still
On the
people who
agenda
have a
for the ZBA
desire
now.
to follow our bylaw
Yeah,
because it was,
it's over in
it's a good bylaw.
Town
Madam
Brook
Chair-
Way or Town Brook Road or something. Yeah.
So, Madam Chair, I think Kathy's got the gist of what we want to say. I'd like to ask her if she could put a footnote at the end. P.S. Thank you for wasting 18 months of the Planning Board of Yarmouth's time in writing an accessory dwelling unit bylaw.
I mean, you
Also,
can
I
say
think we
something.
ought to put on the radar
I guess
it's not anything we can do about it because it's in the legislation.
Mm-hmm.
But this notion that owner occupied is not required, that is one thing I think that this board, all of us agreed on early on. It
Despite
was-
our other disagreements, yes,
Exactly.
I would
think
agree.
That was one of the one fundamental things we
short-term-
agreed on, and the audience tended to, there was
Short-term rental
one
does
flare up
require-
once, I think.
You can
Some guy over here on the right-hand
use a
side.
short-term
But
rental.
by and large, I think the citizens were very, very supportive of
We're
that
pretty much
concept.
adamant about that.
Yeah.
now. But Kathy, can this ADU be a short-term rental?
no.
So there's
We,
like-
we can regulate it. They have no problem with you, because it's not solving the problem if you let it be short-term rentals. So the whole regulation allows you to say, these can't be short-term rentals.
So the following restriction or regulations shall be considered unreasonable and applicable to protected ADU. And then it says, any restrictions or prohibition on short-term rentals that are not consistent with MGL. So does MGL, whatever they
Oh,
give us
that's
here.
the Mass General Law,
Well,
chapter.
yeah, but is that, because it says here that it's,
What page?
You can restrict it.
7103.
Number three.
Number 3B,
8.
8.
You can sublet your unit, I think I read somewhere.
Because there is, they said
Oh.
occupant or co-occupant, or there was some language in here that made it sound like subleases were allowed.
Well, I
I'll go
think
back
they
and find
defined,
Of an
they
ADU?
defined year-round as 10 months. So, I don't know, where was, in here?
Yep. Somewhere in there. I was reading it.
Kathy can do the search.
On page
That's the language
32, it
that
says
was
short-term
used.
rentals may be restricted or prohibited.
But then,
On page 32.
What?
Are you talking about the presentation?
Reasonable regulation, short-term residential, short-term rental.
the presentation.
71.03, 3B8. Short-term rentals, any restrictions prohibiting on short-term rentals that are not consistent with Mass General Law 64G, Mass General Law 40, C40A, Section 3 now includes the following reference to Mass General Law C64G. May be subject to restrictions and
The definition, if that's what you're looking for.
prohibitions on short-term rental.
So the way the presentation goes is there's the language we can't understand, and then in the gray box is the translation.
Exactly.
What page are you on?
We're on 32 and
32 in the
33.
presentation.
Yeah, 32 and 33. Another landscape format, how dare they?
What's the presentation?
We're just not cool anymore.
They're clearly not speaking our language.
Yeah, the Mass General Law, Chapter 64G was the whole short-term rental excise tax. We have already prohibited them on our accessory apartments in compliance with that, so I don't think they're changing that. They're not solving the problem.
No, they're
and they
saying
would
you can-
create, yeah.
You can restrict it if you want
Yes.
to.
If they
Which we
didn't,
already
that would be
have done.
horrible.
We've already done it.
Right.
so the main house or whatever, the main unit can be a short-term rental, and then your ADU can be your year-round rental.
Yes.
So there's your two-family. So I mean, you actually, we may see an uptick in the number of short-term rentals.
Which goes to the discussion you mentioned earlier about considering the idea of having a cap on the number of short-term rentals in town.
Well, the Affordable Housing Trust did engage UMass Dartmouth to do that study with regard. I don't know the status of that. They were very busy, so I think they weren't even considering
They're not-
starting until
they're not-
December.
I don't know that they've started.
Yeah, they indicated that they were gonna,
I thought it was gonna be spring this year,
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Thought they were
so,
gonna do
so
it.
that might be some good information and get some ideas on different ways of regulating it and then
You know
setting.
that Provincetown is restricted, they put a cap on short-term, the number of units.
Number of permits that are issued.
Right.
You
So
know-
is it your interpretation, Peter, that this does allow for short-term rentals?
Well, I guess not in the ADU, but
But
it
in the
certainly
main
does in the
house.
main house, because our occupancy is not required anymore, so, the main house,
So
It
you,
doesn't say you have to live in it.
right?
You're right.
Yeah, that's the way around it.
yeah, so
You're
you have the
absolutely
big
correct.
house, that's where you live now, and then you build a nice ADU, and you move into the ADU and rent out your house.
Exactly.
Or you move and you have a two-family now.
You haven't solved the
Investment
problem.
property.
No, they don't see that as the problem.
Yeah.
They
No,
just
so I
want to
mean,
hit that 8,000 number.
10,000.
Sorry,
8 to
10,000.
10,000.
Just went up by 25%.
I didn't get that before, but now that's very disheartening because that's exactly what's gonna happen.
sure. You're gonna,
That's why we need to have that discussion about, so once we get that report, we need to have that discussion.
And it reinforces Mr. Saban's
they
request
think you-
for his footnote,
Rent out your big
this
house.
discussion. It's like, thanks for ruining the last 2 years.
Kathy, if I, that short-term, that report, I understand what they're gonna do, and,
That's what that.
we have around 1,500 short-term rentals. I think the number, I forget what Mark said, something's 15-something. So if we can identify how many of the 1,500s, how many of that 1,500 really are the, first-time home buyers, the property assessed at
Commercial.
500,000, how many of our short-term rentals are homes that would appeal to a first-time home buyer? And of course, that's, affordability. That's the number of short-term rentals that are taking away from housing stock. It's not, it's not the $1 million house that's a short-term rental. It's the $500,000 Captain's Village Ranch. That's a short-term rental that a first-time home buyer can't buy. I mean, if that study's gonna have value, and if we knew the impact,
Yeah.
if we could identify, and the addresses for the 1,500, I don't think they're online.
They're not online, but
But Mark has them,
you
right?
can ask them from from DOR. The town can ask for the specific addresses that have been. And then there's also, through our online permitting, if you've gotten, your annual permit registration, we should be able to have a list of those. I think
The assessor,
I think when they went to the new OpenGov, they then added a category for some of these things that we weren't tracking as closely before, so I think that might be able to.
I thought I saw, at least in one of the drafts of the RFP, Peter, that was in the scope of work for them to do the dive and get the numbers. Like the existing conditions, the snapshot of what we have right now. I don't know whether they were going to then have anything other than a number and an address.
Yeah, that already pre-exists, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I mean, through DOR, as long as you're registered first term, you're renting as a VRBO, Airbnb, whatever, and you registered it, you have to register with the state, because you have to pay, pay your rental
Right.
taxes.
But your point's well taken, Peter. Like, if this is a short-term rental for $1 million home, you're not necessarily impacting the standard year-round. It probably would have just been a second home for someone versus those 500, I hate to say that, $500,000 homes are first.
what's our median sale, home price? I mean, whatever you want to use to get to that number, so you don't sound like you're picking and
I
choosing.
think
but
what would be interesting for me to see, how many people purchased properties that became short-term rentals?
A lot.
The investor.
A lot.
Yeah.
Because those investors are the ones that ate up the stock. So it'd be interesting to see, okay, Joe Smo purchased, or Joe, whatever his name is, purchased on this date, and 3 months later, it's a short-term rental. Tells us that person bought as an investment. So it'd be interesting to see, with that rush of what happened and into, purchasing properties, how much of that inventory that has been eaten up as investor properties.
Right, as opposed to solving the housing crisis. Yeah.
But like making any good decision, we need good data. And as Peter mentioned, if the study is starting and it would lead us to a conversation about a possible cap on short-term rentals, that's at least a year away, at least, right? Because even if we could do it today, there's a process involved, and we don't have any good data. Well, we don't have enough data to even start that conversation, not necessarily make that decision.
And is that kind of thing that you
Right?
have to go to?
So, I mean, once you start to ripple this stuff out, it's, let me just say, Madam Chair, a hot mess on toast squared.
Kathy, is that the kind of decision would have to go to a town meeting? A cap on?
Oh,
cap?
yeah.
Right. So
So
we're
that-
talking
that adds-
town meeting 26 at the
At
earliest.
the earliest.
How do you even implement that?
We had a sunset clause, right, that we extended
that's
once.
right.
But it's
So, I mean,
November 2020, that's what I was having,
26?
light bulb, 2026, yeah.
That is the opportunity.
Bottom line
for
is,
That would be
hold
that.
hold on
The
to
whole
your
idea was that
bootstraps.
we would
It's
get
gonna be
this
a rough
data
year.
and kind of see what we would be
Well,
doing.
that's one effective cap. I mean, that's one effective mechanism to control
20-ish
what right now looks like an out-of-control process.
We'll have the data by then.
Because we've lost all leverage.
I think the next year is going to be the wild, wild west with trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work and what's allowed and what isn't allowed. Until the dust settles on this, you probably got 6 months before you can start reacting to anything. So you're right, it's probably going to be another year before you can fix any of the mess that they've even created.
And Mr. Grills is completely in the crosshairs,
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, I want a picture before and after.
right? Because it really does boil down to his interpretation and town council's as opposed to the ZBA. It's really not even a ZBA thing.
For ADUs?
It then goes to the ZBA. If he says A,
If he-
they can appeal to the
it.
ZBA.
Right,
So
right,
it'll
right,
have a
right.
ripple effect of
Yeah, that's true.
being able to be in front of the ZBA.
But, yeah.
I just want to get back to
Thank you.
helping Kathy.
ma'am.
Thank
Either
you.
we do the note or we don't, so I just want to focus on that, just to bring it back. What else did you want to go through on this,
I
Kathy?
guess the question is did you want to comment at all on the parking and the definition of a bus station? I mean, which ones of these did you want to comment on?
Kathy, you've already done it.
I think all of them should be commented on. I think they're all valid.
Is this
All
some,
valid. Do you think it's too, do you think?
no, I think with the edits that I'm talking about, with some more of the specifics that we talked about based on my epiphany, I think it's good. And I think maybe like we should be more proactive, like ownership. Should prohibit separate ownership of the ADUs, as these are accessory structures.
Yes.
They need to be accessory to something. Otherwise, they're not an accessory structure.
Right. They were
Just
standalone.
be more definitive in suggestions
Instead
and
of saying,
statements.
ask permission, just make it a declarative statement. Yeah.
And I think maybe not even talking about the dimensional standards, but maybe talking to town council about it.
Works for me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think everything else are very legitimate, and whether you put them as declarative sentences or questions, they're worth, if we're the only ones commenting, I think we ought to comment on it all.
I agree 100%.
So you're concerned with with regard to the comment on the parking, this was just informational to you guys. You're just concerned about not having any parking requirements for the half mile of Route 28 because of the definition of the bus station.
Yeah, since when is the bus station?
We just have concerns, I'd phrase it, we have concerns about your definition of what is a bus, what is
A bus stop versus a bus.
If you ask 100 people where the nearest bus station is, they're going to say it's in Hyannis.
Exactly.
Nobody is going to say, oh, it's at the corner of it's at the corner, it's right by the 99 on 28. That's where the bus station is.
They expanded, through the definition, they expanded the whole concept, and that, it's not right.
Part of it is they're trying to write, like you said, a blanket.
For
and,
300.
you know, when you start looking at the parking issue,
Yeah.
okay, that works in the inner cities of Boston and Springfield, et cetera, and it makes sense not to restrict it. But when you start applying it statewide, it doesn't work in Pittsfield or
Yeah.
Yarmouth.
Yeah, I can't imagine Boston thinks that a bus stop is a bus station. I mean, even the larger cities are gonna say that makes no sense whatsoever.
There's no on-street parking required in the entire
So it's-
city of Boston.
Yeah.
Unless it's a snowstorm and you got your lounge chair.
You got your
out there
lawn
for
chair,
us.
yeah. If you got your lawn chair out, you're good.
Kathy, as an example, though, of, writing this as questions or writing this as definitive statements in opposition or recommendations for change, under modular dwelling unit, how strident can we be in saying mobile homes and tiny homes built on a permanent chassis should not be allowed?
Right. Yep.
It should not be included in the definition or the reference.
But the reference, it's one of those double negatives
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, yeah.
Except
It's
for
referencing-
as, and then I go and I look at it, oh, and it says chassis. So it's almost like, it should be at, but somehow softening it, saying, is that what you meant by this? That's what I was trying to say, I'm assuming this is what you meant by,
Yeah, because we don't wanna give them an opportunity to take away a good idea.
right, no, I like it.
You're trying to allow
Come
you to
back
build
and screw
put
us.
tiny homes this way.
Because we did a good
I have
job.
no problem with a tiny home on a foundation.
Yeah.
Right.
I have no problem with that. I think that's
It's
just
the
a home
chassis.
that happens to be small. But I think tiny homes, all of us who love YouTube and love to tour the tiny homes, they're on a chassis, but they're beautiful and they're cute, and I'd love to live in one. But if you don't define what a tiny home looks like, how is that any different than a mobile home?
I was just gonna say, my RV is a tiny home.
Yeah.
It really is. I have everything a house has.
So I thought that was a positive thing. Is this something that you want to come from me, or do you want me to work with Joanne to finalize it and come from the planning board?
Well, let me ask you a question. What's the easiest, most expeditious way for this,
Given the time frame. yeah.
given the time frame?
This has to be filed by Friday, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a very, I think it sounds like I got a lot of it here, maybe it's just being more assertive. And then I can run it by Joanne, and I think it's better if it comes from, maybe we can say both the planning board and the town planner.
That's
That's
exactly
fine.
what
Yeah,
I
no,
was
think
gonna
it should-
say.
With
it should
Jim's
not be
stern
from just-
footnote.
If it's gonna, it should not be
With
from
planning
me,
board,
it should be from the board.
I was gonna say it should be from all of us,
Yes.
including you.
And words like unanimous.
Yeah.
The board unanimously questions, or the board unanimously is concerned about.
And if there's some way we can preface our comments by saying how disappointed we are after all of the work that we put into public engagement and listening sessions and writes and rewrites over the course of 18 months.
And the beauty of the town meeting process.
And our legislative body, the town meeting, voted in favor of it. This
Iteration.
snatch of local control is, just,
This is why we revolted. The mic. Back in 17.
you can temper that, Kathy, but
Taxation without representation.
somehow,
They
something,
really are stepping on home rule, aren't they?
Awful,
that's,
awful.
yeah.
But remember, it's a political statement. This is not about a housing doc, this is a political statement.
I mean, so
We got screwed with.
Kathy, you and I can work on
Yeah.
on that. I'm sure you'll make it nice.
I don't know.
Then it would be.
You don't have to use
I
the
like
word
idea,
snatch.
And I also think that you should emphasize the amount of public
nice.
participation we had over those 18
Yeah.
months.
Exactly.
That the citizens were completely engaged.
58.
58 public meetings? Is that what it
yeah,
was?
Public meetings.
Is it that many? I didn't think it was 50.
That was something insane.
Dozens and dozens.
Something insane.
How about dozens and, we can go with dozens
Agree
and
with something
dozens.
insane.
Several dozen.
And then, so do we need a motion to sort of, you're empowered to say, sign for the board, right? You don't need individual signatures?
No.
No,
Okay.
no, it's an online form, just so you know. And then you check off the things that you want to comment about, and they've listed some stuff, and then you can attach. You can, if you had a short comment, you could just write it in, but I'm going to do an attachment,
For
attach a
sure, do
memo.
the attachment.
You got it.
So,
And I think you ought to ink it with blood, your fingerprint with a blood mark.
I'm not doing that.
Come on, be a team player.
And send it with a horse's head. Up to,
Oh, my goodness. Madam Chair.
Okay, any other comments on ADUs?
Just by consensus, I'm going to work with the chair to finalize it and submit it.
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy. Meeting minutes is next. May I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes of November 13th?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes of November 19th?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. May I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes of December 4th?
so moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I gave my committee update from community housing. Anyone else met over the holidays?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Rubenstein?
Oh, Mr. Smith.
You go.
Okay, well, it was post-holiday, but yes, I don't know what day it is anymore. Monday, the
The
rack,
holiday went through June 6th.
June 6th?
June 6th, that's a
Jan-
really good
January
holiday,
6th.
Madam Chair, why am I here?
January 6th.
June 6th.
January
I
6th.
would love June 6th, also a day that will, anyway, D-Day. Okay, that's another conversation for another time. The rack met. I guess I'm gonna keep it kind of short. I would just say, at least as of that meeting, and I didn't make it all the way to the end of the select board meeting, but there still is no resolution, as far as I know, on the pump station on Route 28. Now, the good news is, if you would like some good news, is that because of the lead time involved in building the sewer plant, the water resource recovery facility, I'm going to call it a sewer plant because that's what it is, we have a 2.5-year window until things are actually moving through the system. So as much as we would all like it to be resolved yesterday and would have, et cetera, the truth is, despite the delays that this will cause, and it's not clear yet that it will cause a significant one, it's still within the buffer of the fact that we don't have the plant online. But that leads me to the good news, which is the mobilization for the plant is expected to start actually by the end of this month. That may be tweaked a little, but that is where it stands. So that's good news. And as everybody knows, there's still some stuff going on, but there's also limits because it's winter and there's asphalt limitations. And the state, especially the work on 28, the state requires patching every single night, which is a good thing. And if you can't get asphalt and you can't patch, then you can't do work. So there's some stuff going on there. Well, that's what that explains that. The town is still meeting with the state DEP every 2 weeks, and it looks like in terms of the amount of water that can go into the plant, which should be 1 million gallons, but is only 375,000, because of this rule that Ken heard about, and then I heard about when I took his spot, which was the 1/10 of a foot rule. The good news is, believe it or not, the state has now said they're reconsidering the 1/10 of a foot rule. Now, does that mean they're gonna? The difficulty is they've already given us our permit, so it'll have to be a reconsideration when we apply for the next permit, because I think they're 5-year permits.
They are 5-year permits.
So the good news-
There is an ability to amend the permit.
True, but there's been some wiggle room there, so that's good news. And it seems like because we're working with the state, on a regular basis and have been now for over a year through DEP, that they've actually listened. However, just in another example of government fun, the EPA decided to do an audit of Mass DEP. And wouldn't you know it, not every I was dotted and T was crossed, and unfortunately, one of the contracts has to be rebid. However, that again isn't the town of Yarmouth's fault. It's because the state of Massachusetts DEP was politely looked into. I'll just say they were looked into. That would be contract, let me get this right. Hold on. Contract 5, which is Parker's River to Higgins Kroll Road. So everything was hunky-dory, but unfortunately at the very last, like we picked a bidder, we picked a winner, but we couldn't award it because there's a process where you have to get the DEP to say, okay, now you can actually award it. And in that process is where the federal government stepped in and say, hey, Mass DEP, how are you doing on your process? And they said, no, you didn't do it right. Got to do it again.
So we're still okay with our revolving funds?
Right. So the truth, yes, as of now, everything is fine. 0% interest. Everybody loves everybody.
So no
But
financial impact.
no financial implications. But I think it's important to remember that sometimes
Bids come in
humans
higher.
are going to human and government agencies are going to government agency. The good news is, and we're eating into it a little, we still have a 2.5-year cushion for phase 1, big picture. Also, the work at the bridge, the Bass River Bridge, that work is hopefully, well, the bridge itself isn't starting until the fall at the very earliest. That process is starting to unfold in terms of bidding and all that good stuff. And Jeff Colby can tell you more, Kathy. I won't bore you with it here. But there is supposed to be some work by Memorial Day for the stuff that we're going to do, because the sewer and the water was separated for the bridge project because the state delayed the bridge project a year. Okay. And the last thing is, which I think is a good thing, and actually Select Board Member Forrest suggested it last month, but we're following up on it in our committee, is having like a point person, like they called it an ombudsman, which I think is a cool thing, but no one under the age of 40 really knows what that is, respectfully. So like, there's going to be a point person that we haven't hired yet. Apparently in Harwich, it went very well. To just have a voicemail and notwithstanding the wastewater at email address, but to have a phone number that a citizen can call who doesn't want to use email or doesn't like email, to basically say, hey, I don't understand this, or this isn't going right, or what's going on. That's in addition to the fact that folks are getting letters, depending on what contract they're in, about their actual stub and location, all that good stuff. So that is being worked on.
And I do think that would be a great idea for my comment to that. Simply Jeff Colby and the select board are just getting inundated with comments about the current status and where we're at and road conditions and everything else. So to have a point person,
It would be nice.
my 2 cents would be a very good idea.
And there was a lot of misinformation.
Hiring someone.
After the town meeting, surprise, surprise.
expecting someone else.
People thought, oh my God, the project's dead.
Oh.
We're not gonna go forward, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So the ombudsman would really be helpful.
And that's on a sort of ongoing basis, but still, as Ken well knows, the RAC meets on the first Monday of every month at 4:00, and there is an opportunity to literally, if you're a citizen of the town of Yarmouth and you want to talk to the most people involved in this project at once, you should show up on the first Monday at 4:00, because that's when you can get everybody. And oftentimes the town administrator is there with like a cherry on top. So there's that. I think I've taken up enough of your time, but I would say as a final comment, Madam Chair, it looks like there's been some progress with the golf course with Bayberry, and in fact, they're talking about expanding one of the ponds to take on all this extra water. And actually, a good thing, according to the golf folks, is that some of the driving range and the rough will now actually get to be irrigated in a way that either it isn't enough or isn't at all, if we're able to make this all work, because that water's got to go somewhere, because it's not all going to the plant.
I hope it's not the fourth hole. They've already got enough
Okay, well,
balls for
that's,
me then.
what I was told is they're encouraged because it would be the driving range and the rough. So hooray. And also, good news, I did ask this. I said, hey, there's going to be a really big parade on March the 9th. Is everything, like, does everybody know that? You know, just in case, because of all the work being done on Route 28. And good news. Good news. Good news. There won't be a big open hole. So, like in Animal House, where they go into the cul-de-sac during the parade. They will not fall.
Robert Hour's equipment driving down me.
Actually, they're going to lead the parade, Madam Chair, and they will pave all of it. So it's all, no, I'm kidding. Sorry,
Let's
that's enough.
continue.
So the RAC committee is always, it's always something, Madam Chair. Always something. Long may it
Anyone else?
continue.
Yeah, Madam Chair, capital budget last night, had the opportunity to sit with the select board, or sit in front of the select board, I should say, and just review the capital budget plan for the town of Yarmouth, which is quite extensive, as you can imagine. The amount of dollars in the capital budget plan are, you know, fairly significant. And there's quite a bit of equipment and building facility work and everything else that's part of the plan. And the select board was very receptive to the plan. We will be back in front of them in March to have a final vote on everything, but everything is moving in the right direction. But the couple things that came out that the select board was very receptive of was working with the town, as far as from the capital budget, to put together a comprehensive building maintenance plan so that everything doesn't become rush, we got to put a roof on the town hall. And if we can figure out the money and budget it out for the future, it won't all be one year, get these big spikes of spending. We can plan it out. The other thing was to put together a rolling stock plan so that we're metering out and purchasing vehicles over a period of time so that we know, for example, that in 20 years, under state statute, which I didn't know this till I got on this committee, was that fire trucks are being replaced. And a fire truck now, average cost, $4 million.
Wow.
Well, maybe we ought to plan out that $4 million 20 years from now when we know we have to replace ladder number 41. So that was a couple of things that the select board was very receptive of. The other piece of it too is right now capital budget is anything $10,000 and more. $10,000 today doesn't buy you a heck of a lot. And actually under federal guidelines, a lot of tax laws, everything else, capital planning starts at $25,000 now, as you well know. My point of that is we're also asking the town to take a look at that and have capital planning start at $25,000 rather than $10,000. So there's quite a bit that came out yesterday. That, you know, I thought the committee did a wonderful job. Sandy Fife, who was the chair of the committee, really did, you know, yeoman's work and did a great presentation last night. I hope everybody has a chance to watch it.
She did.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
I can say,
Peter?
well, CDC, you know, or most of you know the process there. So our special events, there were 5 grants given out, total about $64,000, and we have another $60,000 to give. We gave away everything that was pretty much asked. There was only 5 people, quite a few less than last year came forward, you know. So we're having a second round. We've submitted out, and you know, the cultural center didn't get in time. So they're one that I think is sort of an annual occurrence. So we have more money to give, and then away we go. You know, this part will be done, and then I guess we get ready to muck it up. Coming months. So we'll see. I do know, I spoke with Karen. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I spoke with Karen, and I guess you know, our scope is economic tourism. And I think some of the members were sort of turned off by the fact tourism was attached to the economic component of what might be considered for Mattakees. You know, I think they would rather have a more broad sort of economic, you know, look.
Economic
know.
development.
Right.
Sounds like your blinders on.
So
Absolutely. I
we'll
mean,
see how it
Yeah.
go forward.
Susan, you have anything?
No, I'm not on a committee. My group hasn't met yet, so.
Madam Chair, if I can?
Yes, sir?
I know Christmas is over and everybody wanted to get those planks for the boardwalk. Who didn't get a chance to get them, you can still buy a boardwalk plank. Go to the Town of Yarmouth website.
Yeah, we're hoping, we were contacted by the Veterans Organization about maybe getting, purchasing planks for all of the 16 individuals who passed away, I think it was in the Iraqi war on Cape Cod, as part of the Big Nick's ride, and getting them all located in the same location. So we're trying to see if we can't facilitate that with Robert B. Hour to make sure that they're all together, and maybe there might be a special symbol that we could get done on there. So I just thought that was a fabulous idea, and
great.
I'm hoping that we can make it happen.
That's great.
It's wonderful.
Great idea.
Yeah, I was really impressed that they reached out. I think it's gonna be great.
That's very cool.
Anything else, Kath, from you?
Also, at the Select Board meeting last night, the Cape Cod Commission gave their presentation on the Station Avenue corridor.
Glad you brought it up.
I think we all know that there's issues with the corridor. I think because there was such a heavy Select Board agenda last night, they didn't have a chance to really get into it. I came because I didn't know if they wanted some questions about what town staff had said, and Amanda Lehman, the town engineer, and myself had both reviewed it and provided some comments back to the Cape Cod Commission. But it sounds like the Select Board's really looking for, to get more information from town staff and have a whole nother meeting to kind of go into that in a little bit more detail.
And especially, Madam Chair, may I follow up on that? Especially, one of the short-term recommendations that I want to point out is changing the use of the center lane at Station Avenue and the Stop and Shop to make them some dedicated left turn lanes, as well as limiting some of the left turns coming out of the Stop and Shop. So even if those were the two things that actually happened in the short term, that would be a net positive, notwithstanding the interchange for Route 6, as well as the White's Path Station Avenue interchange itself. Like that feels to me to be a much longer term solution, or at least timetable. But it feels like there's a juicy Select Board meeting coming with a full presentation, because I appreciate you sharing that entire presentation with us.
Yeah, they also had things on Wood Road too, some recommendations on that, because shockingly, that is actually a high crash intersection.
But it doesn't, the report said it doesn't
Didn't
qualify for a
it
light.
didn't meet the warrants.
But maybe a four-way stop.
Signal warrants, but four-way stop, and also putting reflector eyes on the back of they had a whole bunch of other things. It was a very
school,
truncated
too.
presentation, and then there's that whole section.
Left turn lane for the high school.
Maybe a left turn
that
lane
no
for the
left
high
turns
school.
out of the high
and-
school.
Yeah. And of course, obviously, the Select Board are very concerned about, the whole ME Small, whether we're going to consolidate, it's going to go to Station Avenue, and all the traffic implications. And I think everyone kind of already knows what the implications have been from the middle school going there, and this would just exacerbate it even more. So more to come on Station Avenue, and that'll obviously be stuff that we'll talk about in action items with regard to traffic, continuing with those short-term and long-term recommendations that come out of that.
I also got your note, Kathy, about Joyce Flynn
Oh, yeah, thank you.
interviewed 2 possible candidates for planning board,
3.
3.
Whoa,
Great.
3.
Yeah.
Somebody lose?
I can send
Have we
along the
heard-
talent bank forms if you're interested.
Have we heard anything?
No. I haven't heard anything from Joyce.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
No,
Madam Chair,
No.
that means there could be
Just doing some
there are
math.
multiple openings that we're not, maybe after tonight's meeting, it'll all become clear as to how many openings there actually are in this committee.
no, you can't go.
But that's a good problem to have, Madam Chair.
And they seemed
to have
pretty
3.
good. I can send the talent bank forms if you're interested.
You sent them to me, and I happen to know one of the candidates very
Yeah,
well.
Okay, yeah, so, she did a whole bunch of interviews on Monday with a bunch of different people.
How exciting.
Great.
But they all submit interests in multiple committees.
True.
And,
For one person who was just planning board.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay. That was not the person I knew.
okay.
Okay.
Is there time for one more board member item under the board member item section, Madam Chair? Kathy, have we heard anything more about the exciting town app?
No.
Okay, I'm just respectfully going to keep asking. I'm also going to ask very nicely for the town to please stream the select board meetings live on YouTube. It is not that hard. It can be done. It should be done. I am surprised, I'll use that word, that it's not happening. And for the fact is there are more and more people who do not have a cable subscription. More and more and more and more and more. And respectfully, I understand why it's being shown live on the town's cable station, but there are lots of folks like me who maybe in the next couple of weeks won't have a cable subscription anymore.
You can watch it through the town website, live.
Like I said, you can watch it through the town website. So I'm a dummy.
Madam Chair.
There you go.
if
Not the
I-
last time I will
if
say those
may,
words.
To,
I'm sorry to my friends back there.
through you to our clerk, a
Didn't
couple
know.
of things. Cablecast, you can go online to app Cablecast. And second of all, I think I saw yesterday something that the town of Yarmouth now has some affiliation with a couple of the local radio stations, 99.9, I forgot what the other two were, but, so the town is also through, I'm assuming, our communications director, doing some things to try to improve communications with the community by using the radio.
That's great.
That is great. And I apologize that I didn't know. However, I will also just throw out there, and I could be very wrong, Madam Chair, it also isn't that hard to stream our meetings, at least the select board meetings, live on YouTube. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rubenstein.
I look forward to the new app. Very excited.
We have two meetings coming up this month, one on the 15th, regular meeting, and then the LCP public meeting on the 29th. If it's raining, snowing, bad weather, it's the 5th.
But definitely next week. That's our regular.
Yeah. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.